Welcome to No Clip, the podcast that's like a book club for people who don't think that books reward them enough for being good at them. I'm Chad Rutherman.
And I'm Andy Kinnick.
And today, we're going to be talking about Lies of P, a game that was developed by NeoWiz Games and Round 8 Studio, published by NeoWiz Games, and was released in 2023 on the PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Windows, Mac OS, Xbox One, and the Xbox Series X and S.
But first, if you can give us a like or a rating, it would be greatly appreciated.
So, Lies of P is, and I think we just address Andy, if I may have the floor for 30 seconds.
Granted.
This game is a game that I like a good bit, I would say. I think that when it comes to, and I'll have other like nits and whatever to pick in different parts of the game here and there, like I would with any game. It is a game that when it comes to just sitting and playing it, there's like two things that I think are baked into the design of the game that make my enjoyment, that affect my enjoyment of it negatively.
Okay.
But that's it. It's like two things. The rest of it plays super well. There's lots of good stuff that we can talk about. And yet it leaves the smallest bad taste in my mouth. Can you guess why that is?
Does it have to do with Pinnochio?
It doesn't have, well, kind of, but we'll talk about that later.
No,
it's
actually,
because this game is, it is exactly Dark Souls. There is, if Bloodborne was Dark Souls with guns, then this is Bloodborne without guns, which by the transitive property makes it Dark Souls again.
Funny how we ended up here.
I know. But that's the thing. To me, like, that is the thing that needs to be talked about before we get into anything else. Because I've played a lot of Souls-likes. It's like a very vast and expansive genre at this point. Everyone's doing them.
Right.
We've all got them. And this is the closest a game I've played has ever gotten to just being a From Software Dark Souls game.
Yeah, it's kind of uncanny.
It is.
Yeah, just how much it like feels like it was made by them in certain ways. Like the style is emulated to like a T.
Yeah, it's so strange because I think the thing that I think about with it is that it has made me really consider, like, in a way that I have not before. And keep in mind, I haven't played, like, Lords of the Fallen or whatever, but I've played, like, The Surge, and I've played, I forget, there's, like, at least a couple others that play very similarly.
Mortal Shell, I think.
Yeah, Mortal Shell's a great call-out, yeah. That are, like, obviously trying to do the same thing in terms of genre, the same actions and verbs that the player has, the same setup for their stories and the way that those narratives are told. But Lies of P hits it so on the fucking nose. Pun so intended. And it is like, it's made me have to consider, like, what do I, because like my initial thought was it's so close to Dark Souls that I would almost describe it as like hacky. Like it's like, wow, you really did just like take Bloodborne and just do it again in a way. But that isn't really true. Like if you think about it, like this game is not that close from like a player experience level to just playing Bloodborne a second time. Like that's not the analog here. This is a different game that mimics the mechanics of a Dark Souls game nearly 1-to-1. And it's a weird thing to talk about because the reason that you think about it when you're playing this game, and I think it's unavoidable, is because of like the very overbearing like US copyright law that most people don't agree with, like on the street, just like how insane it can be at times. Where just like if you're a company with a lot of money and then you can just have the rights to an IP, even if all you're doing with it is making like Ant-Man and the Wasp or some shit. Whereas like we've already been over this in the community, not on the podcast, with the Shadows of Mordor. Like they copyrighted the Nemesis system and everybody hated it, and I also hate it. But do I think that all game mechanics should not be copyrighted? Yes, I do think that, and I'm thinking about it more because this is a game that explicitly is using a story that's in the public domain for its inspiration. In the form of Pinnochio. And so it's like this weird thing. I really do support this game's existence and the fact that it is so much like Dark Souls, but it has left me feeling complicated.
Yeah, I feel like it didn't bother me even half as much as it seems to have you. It did feel very weird at first, but I feel like it's just like executed so well. And like I guess the Pinocchio theming goes a really long way to it feeling like its own distinct thing. That like it just kind of faded away, and I wasn't thinking about it at all. Like the second half of the playthrough or more. But yeah, it is interesting because like you got to think about like after Doom came out, everybody called first-person shooters Doom clones for a long time, and you know. I'm not really a shooter fan, nor was I playing those games at the time. I don't know how closely games emulated Doom, but I don't know. Yeah, it's weird because like it's like the first Souls-like we've gotten that's just like gotten this close. So it does. Yeah, it's hard to know how to take it, I think. I don't know if I have any more to say about it than that, but.
I mean, that's fair. I think because I called out on the Lunasid episode, like we talked about how that game took some things directly from From's catalog and just ported them into the game, like the Moonlight Greatsword, and how there was sort of a debate that we had, and I may be gussying up the reality of what our conversation was actually like. But as to like whether or not that was going too far.
Right.
And it's like, this game doesn't have fucking Sigmire in it, but it 100% did have every mechanical interaction. It's got a homeward bone.
Right.
It's got fucking 6 different stupid upgrade materials that you hate having to pick up all the time and differentiate between. Yeah. It's got a firekeeper and a hub space that is like connected to all of the other areas in some way. And so it's like, to me, that feels like so much more of a rip than just putting the Moonlight Greatsword into Lunasid. But like it is also very different because it isn't a thematic element that's being taken, it's a mechanical one. And it's not like you play Super Mario Brothers and then you play fucking Tack and you go, hold on, Tack's just a big ripoff of Super Mario Brothers. Look at him jumping right now. So it's like it's something that made me think about it a lot. I have a lot of other things to talk about in this game. Yeah. But this has been like cycling in my brain as to like the, not even necessarily like the ethics or morality or anything high-minded like that. Just like how much as a consumer, as a player of the game, do you go like, wow, this is just a lot like Dark Souls? And like how much credit do you give to the developer? Because I feel like it's a lot. Like they had to do a lot of work.
Yeah.
To get it this close, but it seems like such a strange goal to mimic something so perfectly. I don't know.
No, it is super interesting because I think I feel the opposite, where the Moonlight Greatsword being in Lunasid bothers me more. But yeah, I can't really articulate why. I think both opinions are valid.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I haven't been following, and like I always do with games that we do for the podcast, like I didn't do like a huge deep dive on what other people have been talking about in terms of this game. And I would like to sort of read up on what people generally think about it, because it being so close is something that is interesting to me, but like it didn't make my experience of playing the game worse.
Yeah,
it's just something that's been circling around in my head.
Yeah, if nothing else, I think it's really going to codify the subgenre of Souls-likes as just a subgenre of action RPG.
Right.
Which
is, of course, to get back around to the beginning of the podcast where we say Lies of P is an action RPG.
Right. Yeah, because I just think like it's been such a big gulf in between actual Souls like or so, like FromSoft games and Souls likes, and this has really I think closed the gap. And like I think Neo
Yeah,
did a little bit before, and then this just closed it even further. I think.
yeah, it's really interesting because of that differentiation. Like before, there were the games that you would hold up to the highest levels in the Souls-like genre are games that took the inspiration from Dark Souls and applied it well to things that they were doing that were their own original ideas.
Mm-hmm.
People would consider a game like Hollow Knight a Souls-like, even though it is the furthest thing in the world from playing a Souls game. The action of doing it is just not like it's not one to one, right?
Right. Yeah.
But now we can say, look at Lies of P. They somehow stole the code base for for Bloodborne and did it again. Like they just made the gameplay very similarly, and it's a weird thing. But I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe this is too long to talk about it. I wouldn't be sure. But we could, however, talk about how those mechanics are actually implemented in the game. Because this game isn't exactly like a Bloodborne or a Dark Souls or a Sekiro. It is sort of a combination of the three.
Mm-hmm.
And nothing else. There's no other DNA in here. It is an inbred child of FromSoft's like three main things.
Yes, and Geppetto.
Also, Geppetto's there. He contributed as well. Yeah, so you do, like in a Dark Souls game, you run around, you pick up shiny objects, and you use weapons, which is another thing that I feel like is kind of like an end of the first half note that we'll have to talk about, because the weapons have their own sort of like side mechanic attached to them. But you mill about and you kill enemies with like light attacks and heavy attacks and running attacks. And there's a deflect system and a dodge. So the dodge is similar to Bloodborne, but like super extra short range, which makes it really hard to actually dodge anything. And the deflect is like Sekiro deflection in that you just press the same button that you would normally press to block to do it. But you do it at the very beginning, which probably my hottest take on Lies of P. I doubt that I'm going to be way outside the norm on most things, but I think that the general industry trend of making the parry part of the block mechanic instead of its own thing, I just don't like it. I like having to commit to the parry more than doing the block dance thing that Sekiro sort of pioneered. But that's it. And as you can see, if I was describing a From Software game or this game, that list of things would be nearly identical in every way.
Yeah, it does feel like its own thing, though. Because, like, I think a lot of the discourse about this game, I think when it came out, like, to my understanding, was that it's, like, super hard. Like, I remember, like, I watching, like, a video that was like recommending it without spoiling anything. They were like, this game is like brutally hard even for people who are like veterans of like From Software games, and like lots of other stuff. People said lots of things about this game that I don't agree with, that made me think that I would hate it. But in the beginning, I do think it works similarly enough but also differently enough from the games it's emulating that it can make it a little hard to know how to play like optimally. I think like the first third of the game ended up being the hardest for me, like the first handful of bosses, because like I didn't understand like when to parry and when to dodge and like what exactly the game was like expecting of me. And I think it's because of all those like new mechanics, or like it's hard to know like what the flow of the game should be like should I be dodging mostly, should I be parrying mostly, should I be doing both, etc., etc.
Right. Yeah. No, and I agree with you. I think I both in terms of that is what I heard about this game prior to playing it. It's like this is like Dark Souls, but it's like even if you play Dark Souls, it's going to be like really hard. Everybody said it was a really difficult game, and then the other thing is that yeah, the flow is different than it is in Dark Souls games. I think that from what I understand of it, because as we've discussed on the podcast, I did not get particularly far into Sekiro. I mean, I played it for like 20 hours, but like I didn't get very far in that time. It is closest to that in terms of its like, in terms of the defensive actions that you can take. But at the same time, like the game doesn't have the same design as Sekiro. Like even taking that combat system, which it doesn't take 1-to-1 or anything, but like, and putting that within the confines of Lies of P feels completely different than playing Sekiro. There's not a posture bar. Enemies just have health. They're enemies that you just wail on until they die. And you don't have to engage in sort of like that back and forth with them. And also stealth is like functionally garbage in this game. There's just nothing to it really. It's a slow walk thing, and like half the time the enemies are just programmed to notice you regardless of what you're doing. So it doesn't really do much. So really it is. It's like you said, like that. What is the correct mixture of like dodging and blocking and parrying and doing everything else, just trying to interrupt stuff. So I agree with that. But hey. I will say that actually does lead into one of the two things that I think that this game does poorly. Not as good as a From Software game, though I don't want that to be my only point of reference. I think that some of this is just... I mean, this one is definitely a point of reference to Dark Souls, unfortunately. One of the things this game I don't think really captures in the combat system is its enemy balance and like its attack animation. Who'sy what's it's. I'm not a professional animator and do not know what the actual like terms or how you would talk about this like like on a professional level. But like a lot of enemies in this game have like what I'm talking about, I guess, broadly, is that I feel like the animation of an enemy's attack and then the amount of damage that attack does is not very often linked in a way that makes a lot of sense to me. And I think my guess is that it was balanced more around the idea of the deflection, where it's less about the speed of the enemy's attack and more about how difficult it is to predict when it will land. And that's kind of how they based the damage numbers around. But like my example for this is the puppet disruption enemies in the opera house. And honestly, I think this applies to like more than half of the enemies in the game, but I think that they're really clear. A lot of enemies in this game have like interrupter attacks, essentially a way to balance heavy weapons so you don't just smash everything to death.
Right.
The enemies will hit you while you're doing a charge or something by just having these quick little attacks. But the puppets in the fucking opera house will hit you for half your HP on an attack that takes like less than a half second for them to perform. And they have like absurd hyper armor and damage reduction while they're doing attacks, but are like otherwise weak. It doesn't make them necessarily like hard. It was definitely surprising the first time I fought one.
Yeah.
And I like hit one twice and it just died. And I was like, haha, cool. And then I moved on and I hit one of them and then it just did like a 5-hit combo on me. It murdered me instantaneously.
Yeah, I feel like those ones had a weird mechanic that I never quite grasped fully, where like if they had like strings that would show up, like ethereal strings. And if the strings were visible, they took like way less damage. And if the strings weren't, they took way more. But I have no idea what dictated like when the strings would show up and when they wouldn't.
Yeah, I think you are correct. And also I I assumed that the strings were there during attacks, but I could be wrong.
I don't think so.
But yeah, it gives them like way more damage reduction for some reason, and it makes them a very unpredictable enemy to fight. But I found this to be true. Like the enemy they teach you the parry on, like cop robot with a baton, is like. They're like, press the L1 button to block it. If you hit it the right time, you get a parry. There's a video that I know you have watched on the internet. It's called like The Lost Soul Arts of Demon Souls.
The Matthew Matos's video.
Yes, it's a Matty Mai Tai joint.
A classic.
A classic where he talks about how modern Souls games have more focus on just like varying the enemy's attacks so that you have to dodge and hit back better.
Yeah,
like there's less like strategy to it.
Yeah, like they delay their attack animations by like a half second more than you expect.
Right,
so
exactly.
That, like you like drop the like right when they hate you.
And it is like that is true. That's a true statement. I'm a lot softer on it than I think Matthew Matasis is, because I think it is kind of a natural evolution for the genre, because like if somebody has played, like many people did, Demon Souls and Dark Souls 100 times, then you're not going to be able to present them with a game that is even close to that in terms of challenge if you do not make the attacks harder to dodge and recognize.
Right.
But this game very much follows in that tradition, and so the very first enemy that they're trying to teach you the parry on will do like a random delayed strike, like where he goes and swings and then it like stops because he's a broken puppet, which I think is a cool thematic way of making the delayed attacks work better. But it's still like he will even like do 2 attacks that are easy to parry in a row, and then throw out a delayed attack like he's fucking Margit from Elden Ring. And you're like, what the fuck happened? Why is the tutorial enemy even doing this?
Yeah, like,
and that attack, which takes 4 seconds to do, will deal like 0 damage at all to you. Yeah. It's weird. It's just, it broke my head when I was trying to like do risk reward.
Yeah. Those there are these big hulking puppets with no heads. That there is like they're kind of like a mini boss style enemy. Like the game has like these huge enemies in areas that are like real hard. He's like one of those in an early area, and like I fought him many times because I've used him to farm star fragments. But even though I've probably killed like fucking 200 of that guy, I like still got tripped up by his attack animations. So yeah, I did feel it on certain enemies, but like feel like that's not something I really noticed. Like the animation of the attack, feeling like it doesn't correspond to the amount of damage it does.
Yeah, I noticed it big on the example that I presented, but there's also just like, I forget what boss it was. I'm gonna say it was like, I mean, I don't want to talk about the final boss right now, but like Simon Manus is, spoilers by the way, the final boss of the game does these like big swings where he's got like a big electrified golden staff with a huge the bell end of it is like bigger than you are.
Yeah, like a big hammer and then type thing.
Yeah, and he like swings it around real fast and it like sparks on the ground and like shoots rubble up and he like slams it in. And I noted that that attack did significantly less damage to me than an attack that took no time at all from a guy with a rapier who was like down the stairs from the boss fight. Like if that guy went like,
those guys are brutal.
They really are. I mean, they can be.
Yeah,
I'll talk about my experience with the game, but like I just noted, like there's just, and bosses obviously are balanced different than regular enemies because blah blah blah. You're going to be in the fight for a long time. There's like a pacing to it. There's a whole art to designing bosses,
right?
Which is something we could talk about. But when you look at the damage difference between different enemies and different attacks, it was always like It was weird. It was difficult for me to grasp because I was playing as a character that uses very big, heavy weapons.
Right.
And so I had to sort of judge when it was safe for me to take damage, like to trade with the
Right.
enemy versus like blocking and parrying and dodging away. And almost always I got that mental calculus wrong. Like I'd be like, oh, I could go in for an attack here. And then they would just do 15 attacks in a row and cut off my leg and feed it to me. And I was like, wow, it looked like he was just going to like kick. I'm surprised that that's what happened afterwards.
Yeah, I guess like I just think about these kinds of things really differently. Like I feel like I kind of like use the force and like think about them less analytically than a lot of other people that play these games. Like to reference another YouTube video, Joseph Anderson did a video on Elden Ring, and he has this like big section in it where he talks about like how combo strings in Elden Ring are like terrible and suck. And like I just don't think about these things that way. Like I just kind of like almost like kind of like sight read it. Like people talk about like learning the bosses and like, and I mean I do engage with these sort of things, but I feel like on a lot less of like a, I don't know, like concrete way than other people seem to, like a less robotic way. At least that's how I think of it. So like, yeah, I guess I just don't. Yeah, I just did not notice that at all.
I think
thing that you're
from my
about?
experience, like just talking to other people about games like Dark Souls, I think there are essentially two kinds of people when it comes to like learning a boss, where there are people like you who internalize it purely just like from feel.
Yeah,
like you play the boss. Yeah, and you understand and you start to do it. And that is what I try to do all the time. But I know that I'm just the kind of person that has to be like I found one of, and we'll talk, I don't know when you want to talk about bosses, but there is a boss that I found to be way harder than it needed to be. And it was my fault, but also I have complaints about its design. But there was just like, there was an attack that I knew I had an opening after he did the attack. And I would audibly, like out loud, would say, he would do the attack and then I would go 1, 2, 3, 4 to count like where I knew I was going to be able to attack. So if I did it too early, I'd get hit and then I wouldn't be able to like actually punish, or I would die. So it was like, whenever I have trouble with something, I have to just like start building it out in my head. And I think that's where that comes from.
I think I do the same. I think the difference, I just came up with this analogy and I think it's pretty good. It's like the difference between like reading sheet music or just being the kind of person who can like play a song by ear. Like you're still counting like rests and like knowing when to come in and like what rhythms to play, but you're doing it in a completely, like your brain is working in a different way to accomplish the same thing.
Yeah, no, that makes sense too. Like, because I'm an impractically bad musician, I can, because and it is literally like almost the same thing with these games where it is like, I am bad at them because I am not the kind of person who can play it by ear. Mm-hmm. Also, I don't want to do the actual work of reading the sheet
learning
music.
the sheet music. Yeah,
exactly. So I have to like, I'm constantly just pushing. Every boss fight that I win is like a fucking seat of my pants. Like God stepped in to help me to get through it because I just refuse to learn bosses. And then sometimes I do have to learn bosses, and then I do feel good. But I don't know. I honestly can't explain why I like these games. It seems like I hate them, but I really do enjoy the process. Do we want to talk about bosses?
Sure.
I don't know if we're going too all over the place or not.
I think we're kind of sticking to more mechanical stuff, so I guess it makes sense. We're just doing an inverse of what we normally do. I feel like we'd talk more mechanics on the second half. But yeah, we can talk about bosses. Which one was the one that you were alluding to?
Yeah, I was anticipating a conversation about like hardest bosses in the game, like what we each thought. But I think it is a good way to open it. I think for me, I think that like if I'm speaking critically as like somebody who just beat the game and is reflecting on their experiences and put thought into it, I would say that I think the hardest boss in the game for me was probably the King of Puppets. And but for some reason, the boss that took me more tries was Corrupted Parade Master, the one that happens in the middle of the game when the alchemists attack.
Yeah, it's kind of like
hotel.
the start of Act 3.
Okay, in like the third of the game,
There you go.
as everybody calls it. And there's two reasons for this. And one of them is just that I'm stupid and I am frustrated easily by things. But the other reason is my fault, and that is the way that the weapon system works in this game, I refused to commit to a weapon for like until like the last like 2 levels of the game. And so I had all of these half moonstones to upgrade a weapon past +6, and I just refused to use them because I hadn't decided what weapon to use them on yet. And so the highest level weapon that I had going into that fight was a +6. Because I didn't feel like I was really hurting up until that boss.
Right.
But that boss ended up taking so long because of my bad damage output that it was a real slog to like repeatedly go through it again and again. I will complain, however, I think, and more on the behalf of other players of the game, because this didn't end up affecting me that much. But I do think it is probably a bad design choice to take a player's ability to shop away from them and then put a boss that inflicts a status ailment that you need a consumable item to remove
Yeah, I hadn't thought
immediately
about that.
in their path. Yeah, I didn't use the ampules at all for the whole game, so I just had like 30 of them going into the fight, so it wasn't a big deal. But I can imagine somebody who did use them, like the game wants you to. They
Right.
put them in the game for a reason. But if you did use consumable items and you went in there with like 4 of them and then you ran out, every time you got decayed, that's just a reset. Because your weapon's gonna break, the boss is way too aggressive, and spawns ads, which is a big pain in the ass.
Yeah, you do have a second weapon that you carry, so you could switch to that.
Who's got the capacity for that? Not this guy. I never had a second weapon equipped.
Oh, really?
I would have loved to have had a second weapon equipped. But I could not afford it.
I loved I think it's like I don't know if it's a halberd, but like I think it's like kind of like either a Chinese or Japanese style halberd weapon. And it was
the booster glaive.
Oh, well, there you go.
It's from Wo Long, weirdly.
Why do you know that?
Because I looked up something a while ago. I saw this is just as an aside, and we'll continue. Remember Booster Glaive?
Yes.
Talking about weapons and having multiple weapons equipped. There's I was watching somebody play the beginning of this game. For people who don't know, which is everyone except for Andy, I started playing this game in January and then didn't play it until now. So there was a big period of time. And so I went back to a streamer who I like to watch and watched him play the beginning of the game. And I noticed when he fell on his ass, he stayed on his ass. And I was like, that's weird. Why don't you roll out of that? And apparently, from the time the game released until November of last year, you couldn't roll out of a knockdown state. They patched that in, and they also it used to be a porgan, a P organ thing. Like you could unlock the very basic ability of not being dead instantly if you get knocked over.
Right.
So they replaced that with a different ability, and they also put in, for some reason, a Wo-Long collaboration, which was that other Souls-like game that came out like in a similar time frame. They did a collab, and I think there's some Lies of P weapons in that game now as well.
Neat.
So yeah, that's the history of why I know that. Go on.
Well, yeah, I'll have to thank that game because like it was like very Hunter's Axe adjacent for me. Like I used that weapon for so long before I decided on like a primary weapon.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I was very used to switching back and forth. So yeah, like that boss didn't give me that much trouble, so I had not thought about the fact that you can't go to the blacksmith.
Yeah, that's true. And I, to be fair, didn't think about just equipping 2 weapons. I would have like a level 6 and like a level 4 weapon, but it's better than a broken level 6 weapon. So, or trying to sharpen it in the middle of a fight where a boss is constantly diving at you.
Right. I also...
But yeah, I don't know, for some reason I had a really hard time with that guy.
I also got the game like a month and a half ago, or 2 months ago, because it was on sale, and started it, and then didn't touch it until now. So like the boss I think I had the hardest time with was like the furnace robot in the Vanini factory.
Fuococo or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know what his name is.
That boss took me like fucking 30 tries or something because I had to relearn how to play the game.
Which is entirely fair considering that boss, for me, the second phase of that boss is such whiplash compared to the first phase that it also took me many tries to beat it. And it was also the first thing that I came back to after leaving the game. So that was a fun experience. Yeah, that one's a weird one because the second phase is like all ranged.
Yeah.
It like he just shoots fireballs at you and stuff. So you would think going in on him would be the best idea, but then he does like an AoE and then he just runs away.
Yeah, it's
like
it's one
weird.
of those bosses where like the RNG feels really hard to play around. Like it's one of those bosses where you feel like you're playing a boss that was programmed. You know, like it just like, I don't know, you feel like you can see the seams of the fact that you're fighting a video game boss. If that makes any sense.
Well, that's just, as we've discussed, how I see them anyway.
Well, I guess that's true, yeah.
So, it was not a super different thing for me. But, fully agree, though. That guy is hard. Though, I don't know. I'm just, because of my choice of, which we can, I mean, I don't know. I don't know exactly where to go with this. I think we can insert this and then come back to bosses afterward. Using a weapon with its own handle, like the blade and handle combination,
right?
Which is a mechanic this game has that we'll talk about in a second. Using it with its own one, like so that they were matching, was fucking anathema to me. So I just refused at any time. And so the first thing I would do whenever I got a weapon was immediately break it apart and try it on something else. So there was a lot of like learning involved while I was playing through the game. But I ultimately, and this is like truly ultimately, like I didn't learn this until Saturday. It's Monday. I beat the game on Sunday. So like 1 day of playing, 2 days, but, I was always under the impression, like, why would you not just put the biggest thing on the fastest blade handle and swing a giant thing really fast? And the game does not communicate this very well to you, but if you use a weapon, there's like two, it'll say like slash and stab. And then next to those is like a equal sign or a dash or a down arrow. And what that indicates is like if the blade and the hilt are not compatible, so if you don't have an equal sign, then it will deal less damage. And so I was playing a bunch of weapons that did shit garbage damage because I thought they were great and I didn't know that there was a difference. So I was just playing bad weapons for like most of the game and just having a great time with it. But ultimately I did settle on these big giant weapons, which was always going to be the case. I put 0 points in technique. I put 100 million points in motivity. And by that I mean like 36 or whatever at the end of the game. And so anything that was just real fast fucked me for like an hour. And then I got it. So the King of Puppets was like the second phase specifically, obviously. Like Romeo. Yeah, just fucking murdered the shit out of me forever.
I mean, he was pretty hard. Like, I almost sent you a Snapchat, but I knew you were behind me. Like, after I beat him, being like, I'm the king of puppets now. You know, like... Because, that one took me a bit as well. But yeah, I knew that you would like the blade and handle combination system a lot. Like conceptually, and I also thought it was a cool idea, but like once I found a combination I really liked, I just never bothered again. So kind of like the opposite. Like I experimented a bit in the early game and then found a combo I really liked and then just rode that the rest of the time. So it was like big black handle. I don't remember what the head of it originally was, but I just put like the starting sword on top of it. So it was kind of like a weird, like a hammer handle, but with a sword blade on it. But I really liked it.
It would be really funny if it ended up being the thing that I took to the end of the game. But no, I think mine was more like brass. I don't know. We'll talk about that in a second. But yeah, I actually liked the system less than you might imagine because it does seem like something that was tailor-made for me because I love this kind of variety in a game. I just like doing a bunch of stuff and making things that probably won't work. And I like failing if there is like creativity behind it. If I failed because I was trying to do something that was too stupid, that's a great failure for me. That's one I love to see. But I didn't understand the concepts that were working. Like I was trying to do fucking microbiology after the 3rd grade when I learned about the powerhouse of the cell and shit. Like it was, I had no idea. I had no concept whatsoever of what I was actually doing. And so I ended up falling in love with the fire axe handle, which by the way, which class did you start as? Were you the sweeper, the big strength guy?
Yeah. No one was surprised that I picked the strength build.
Yeah, I did the same thing in this one as well. Well, I looked at them, I was just like, well, those are just like wimpy piss swords for wimpy
wimpy
bad,
piss boys.
For wimpy piss boys. And so I was like, I'll take the big giant greatsword, thank you, and I'll work it out from there. And so for a long time I was using the starting sword blade, on the fire axe handle because it was fast and the R2 made you run forward and then slam down, which is incredibly useful, and sort of ended up playing into what I did for the rest of the game, which was only use charged R2s, just rip the rest of the buttons off your controller. You don't need them. And settled on, in the end, like my first +10 weapon was the Mjolnir hammer blade, which is the thing that I think you get it in the crumbling city version of Krot. And then the handle from the pickaxe, which worked really well, and I didn't realize this is how I eventually figured out, because the downward striking animation is similar enough to what the original handle was that it was getting the maximum damage from that animation. So it ended up, and honestly, it just fucking slapped, though. the thing that I was not realizing, that I had to Google to find out, is that two-handed weapons get a bonus to the charged R2 stagger
Yeah, you will
damage
stagger
amount,
stuff way
whatever
faster.
it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I was running around with big weapons on tiny one-handed handles and not getting the stagger bonus. But once I realized I could just stagger fucking anything, I leaned really hard into it. Which of course did make some things harder, but
Yeah.
I thought it ended up being a viable strategy, which is a dream for me. I love just like take the biggest thing in the game and hit somebody really hard with it as like a strategy that I was able to take to the final boss. It gets full marks from me for that.
Yeah. I mean, I played kind of similarly with a different weapon, but it sounds like it was kind of similar in the move set. But yeah, big two-handed, like lots of charged R2 attacks. Just like fucking blast a guy.
Yeah, it's great. It's extremely fun. I do want to call out. What do I want to call out? Are there any bosses that you want to call out?
I guess if I had to say which one I thought was actually the hardest and wasn't just hardest because I hadn't played the game in 2 months, I don't remember her name exactly. Was it like Lixatia or something? Something with an L.
Breaks in,
Yeah.
it had an X in it. Starts with an L.
Yeah.
I don't remember the rest
The
of it.
lightning.
I do know who
lady,
you're talking about.
Yeah,
that.
on the bridge. She was really hard. I think she was probably the hardest in the game.
When I was talking to you, you really sort of like, you were like, you've got like 3 bosses left and they're all really hard. And I was like, all right. And so I like did my protein powder. I did some push-ups. I got really ready for the day. I was like, it's Sunday, baby. Sunday night, Liza P. Gonna beat the 3 hardest bosses in the game right in a row. And I guess I got too pumped for it because I did not find any of the final 3 bosses to be like as hard as most of the ones. She was by far the hardest of the last 3 though. Fully agree on that. But for some reason, like her second phase just kind of like clicked for me, weirdly, because it was like it's like a shadow cannon. Where you can deflect the balls of lightning back at her for damage. And I was having a blast with that. Though there were like, obviously there's some bullshit in there. Like her first phase has an attack that's like 13 consecutive swings in a row. And it just got very awkward to deal with.
Yeah, she's also like, you can like hit her with a charged R2 when her health bar is blinking. And then she'll just do an attack before she like kneels over for you to hit her, which I thought was like total bullshit.
Fully agree. It's like her and then like that one enemy that like slashes at you with tentacles. That's like not a boss, is just a regular guy. Are enemies that when you knock them down, they just like do an attack before. I think Victor does it too, the big mutant guy.
The evolved human.
The evolved human might also do it in the second phase. I don't remember. But yeah, I certainly hated that as somebody who does the charged R2 moveset. It's really annoying to have to deal with that. Though honestly, the boss versions of them are way less annoying than the guy who just slashes at you with tentacles.
Yeah.
Because that's like this whole thing in front of him that's like 10 feet long. You have to just like run away, and then you have 2 seconds to go actually get the crit.
Yeah. And by the last 3 bosses, I was not including the temple guardian or whatever the fuck he was called, where you hit his leg. I was instead counting the nameless puppet, the optional boss, just in case anyone was confused.
Yeah, Nameless Puppet is definitely the third, but I did forget about Door Guardian, who I also beat on the same day. Fortunately, only took me like 3 tries. Fuck that boss. Like, I am okay with gimmick bosses generally. I think like I think it's more appropriate in a game like Dark Souls where they have like there's like 30 bosses or more depending on the game. Liza P does not have the roster to support a guy whose thing is just hit him a few times until he falls over. And also, if you get hit, you can't dodge your attack anymore.
Right.
Like, very irritating. And the run back to him is absurd.
Yeah, it's awful.
Yeah, it is the worst one in the game for sure. So easier after you kill the big cat things, but
Right, yeah, I just never did.
As a R2 enjoyer,
Right, yeah.
did you notice? I'm sure you did. If you kill an enemy with an R2 or with a charged R2, like they will fall apart. Like you'll knock something off of them, or they'll cut in half, or whatever.
I love
the cat
breaking weapons of enemies with the charged R2.
Oh, yeah.
That's like so satisfying. But anyway, the cats.
The cats, when you do the charged R2 to kill them, just like fall apart in the dumbest imaginable Play-Doh way, where like just all four of their limbs just disconnect and then their torso falls down and they just kind of like jumble around as a ragdoll. It looks so bad and so stupid and is my favorite in the whole game. So there's that. No, the Nameless Puppet though, the final boss, the secret final boss. I thought I was gonna be like, you should just like go try it a couple more times because it wasn't that hard.
It didn't seem
and then I went
that
online.
bad, but like I just like the last area is so long that I was just like,
It is.
I'll just let Geppetto win. Like I just really just like wasn't in the mood.
Yeah, I went online and people, I did see people actually like very upset about Nameless Puppet. And I beat him on the second try with a weapon that I had unlocked 5 minutes ago.
Yeah.
Like I took the final boss's soul weapon, I did upgrade it to a +5, so it was max level. I didn't just like go in there with a limp stick and beat him to death. Like I'm not a god gamer. But yeah, I did just like smack him with an R2 a bunch of times. I got to like the second phase of my first try. I was like, okay, second phase. Of course, every boss in this game has a second phase. And then went into it the second time and just knew more about it and did better on the first phase and then like barely killed him on the second. And man, I don't know. I can't explain this at all, but I think that the secret is just like just using the R2 is the only good way to play the game.
Yeah.
And I don't know why everybody thinks that it's cool to even ever deflect or dodge when you can just smash everything with an R2. Yeah, I don't know. That's kind of my thesis statement, I would say, on the mechanics. Yeah, one last thing on bosses, and I just have to imagine that you hated this, but like every boss in this game is a multi-phase fight. It might literally be every boss. Like the very first boss has a phase transition where he rips his head off, but it doesn't have 2 health bars.
Right. Yeah, yeah, I think like second half of the game they've all got 2 health bars. But maybe even earlier than that. Like I think I kind of forgot. Cuz like the what is it, like the Archbishop or whatever? That's like first third of the game and he's got 2 health bars.
Yep. Also probably the first like actually very difficult boss. Like
see, I didn't think that one was too bad.
He was.
I think the style of boss that we have trouble with is just the opposite from each other.
That is probably true, yeah. Like, when I fought the King of Puppets, I hit that dude one time with with like an R1 and was like, oh, there's gonna be 2 phases to this fight. I know already. And then but like, killing the first phase of Andreas and then getting the second phase, was like a Melania level betrayal for me.
Yeah.
I was like, no fucking way there's a second phase to this guy. Like a whole ass other health bar. And his second phase isn't even different than his first phase. You get like 10 seconds where you fight the snake body. And then he just turns around and does the first phase again. Yeah, so it was just like doubling the health of the boss.
Yeah, I think that's like balanced with the Phantom, the summon in mind. Because like if there's a second guy fighting him, he'll like turn around and fight you with the different sides. Like the aggro will be split between his 2 halves.
That can make more sense, yeah. I do wonder how the AI like kicks on, because like you rarely see the other half if you're fighting it. from one side, and I know that like his big explosion move where he shoots a laser beam, he does like a slam that is like timed to be a little bit after it, no matter which side of the boss you're like actively fighting at the time. So like that animation just goes off. I wonder if like if as you're fighting the first like one half of him, if the other half is just also doing attacks and you just don't notice it. I don't know.
It's possible.
Yeah, that even seems like kind of a complicated fight just to make. So I don't necessarily hate that the second half of the fight is kind of similar to the first half. But I did have to resort to the Spectre on that one. I think it was like him and the King of Puppets and sort of Manus and which I don't know is not really that interesting of a story. But I used it just to get the first phase down because the second phase seems like it's designed to just kill the Spectre instantaneously no matter what you do.
Yeah. I mean, you can use the, what is it, like the wish cube.
The cube!
To heal him. So, the cube. And you can upgrade that so you can use it twice. So you can keep him alive for a pretty long time.
Oh. No, I hated the cube and just didn't. We'll talk about that in a second, in several minutes. I don't know, but yeah, I never used the cube really at all, and was honestly kind of angry about its inclusion. But anytime that I used the Spectre in that fight, I would get to the phase transition, and the Spectre would run at him, and then 1,000 beams of light would hit him in the head, and he would just fall over. And so I just kind of gave up on trying to keep him up, and would just use him and then beat the first phase, trying to take minimum damage and do it quickly, so I can then try the second phase again.
Right.
But yeah, we'll yeah, there's a lot actually still to go. We got to talk about the cube, obviously. We got to talk about the Porgan. We got to talk about characters and the fucking narrative of the game.
And aesthetics,
it's a lot,
etc.
Theming and aesthetic. This is a game about fucking Pinocchio, and we haven't even mentioned it yet. So we should talk about those things after the break. Good enough. Welcome back.
Hey.
Okay, I would like to hear your opinion on a thing that I bet you will have more of at the very least of a positive opinion on than I have, which is how did you feel about this whole game being fucking Pinocchio?
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised this wasn't the first thing we talked about, but
it's a little bit more jarring that the game is Dark Souls.
That's true. That is fair. But anyway, first of all, I just want to say the name Lies of P is fucking stupid. That is all.
I have heard an explanation for this that has no source. My source is, I believe, a guy in Twitch chat. So take this with the most enormous grain of salt that you could ever imagine. But what I've been told is that P in Korean, which the developers are Korean, sounds like the word for blood. This still makes very little sense because I don't really view Lies of Blood as being a title that makes any sense for the game. But it is at least anything to justify just calling it Lies of P, which is a bad name. You're correct, yes.
But anyway, I really liked the Pinocchio theming. Like, at first it sounded cool in just, like, a meme way. Like, oh, it's like Pinocchio Bloodborne or whatever. Whoa.
Whoa, that's wacky.
But, like, once you get into it, you're like, oh, like the blue fairy from the fairy tales, like the Firekeeper. And then you have, like, Jiminy in a little lantern on your belt, like who like gives you exposition and stuff, kind of like Mimir, but much less intrusive. Uh, and it's just like all this, like the way they have incorporated all this stuff from the source material and implemented in a way that like fits the Dark Souls structure is like was really surprising and impressive to me. I was like, oh, this like fits way better like than I ever would have guessed. And I think like cuz like as especially kids born in the 90s hashtag only 90s kids.
Only 90s kids.
Like there's so many fairy tales we think of as just Disney movies, Pinocchio being one of them. And so I think it's cool to see other interpretations of fairy tales. So like yeah, I found it all like very cool and interesting. So thumbs up for me.
Yeah, and that I think that's fair. Everyone else that I've talked to about this, which is one person, once again, sample size non-negotiably small, is also thinks that the Pinocchio theming was done really well. I found it kind of. I mean, I don't want to say the word cringe because even saying the word cringe is kind of cringe. But like, it felt like I agree with you in terms of like the fact that they found places to put these things to make them fit in with what their game is, which is Bloodborne.
Mm-hmm.
But I also feel like why is Jiminy not just called Jiminy? It's Gemini, but they very noticeably pronounce it wrong.
Yeah, I just assumed that was like what it was in the source material or something, and Jiminy was like an Americanization. But that was just a guess.
I suppose that was just possible.
Yeah, that was just a guess on my part.
Yeah. But then like, I don't know. I found like the whole process of lying as a not even a mechanic, like it is a narrative choice based system that exists purely outside of the other mechanical interaction you have with the game. It felt kind of glued on to me, and I never really cared about it. I did want to see what would happen if the nose grew really long on the portrait, but I guess I never quite got there. So I don't know. To me, like it didn't do nothing for me or anything. That would be ridiculous. But it did very little in terms of like my enjoyment in this game very much came from like a mechanical level more so than it did anything else.
Yeah. Now I agree that like the lying feels like it should have been more significant to the game. Like it's like you do it like once or twice at the beginning. You have like a choice, and there's like a big chunk of the game where it's just not a thing at all. I was like, man, they really dropped this mechanic, and then they like kind of bring it back. But no, I feel like they could have done way more with that. Yeah, like and a lot of the times, like the portrait on the wall with the where the nose grows, like it was like at a set length for me, like the whole game, and every time I tried to like go interact with it, it said you can't use this right now. So I have no idea like what was up with that. But yeah, because a lot of the time, like I didn't even really feel like I was lying. Like you get a lot of the choices you have to make are like moral decisions, and not really lying. Yeah, so I thought that was kind of weird.
And like, because lying is like because I have actually talked the other person I talked to a little bit about the whole like lying mechanic, and they were just all for it. They're the kind of person who just likes everything for some reason. So it's weird. It's interesting to bounce things off of because I feel like I tend to, even when I feel positively about something, speak critically of it as just sort of, I don't know, it's a trait.
It's
of
almost
how I
like
talk.
we do a podcast where our job is to be
I think
critical.
the podcast has corrupted me a little bit on this. But it's like, it feels like the lying is overemphasized in the fact that the game is called Lies of P.
Yeah.
Because you lie a couple of times, but then most of the things you do that actually increase your humanity aren't really lying. It's like you said, like moral decisions or actions you take. Listening to music is not lying. But listening to a record does increase your humanity. So it's like, why is there a difference? Like, why is it the lying is the thing that makes it into, I mean, because that's what Pinocchio is known for.
Right.
Actually, this is a rhetorical question. But, like, in terms of the mechanics of the game, it feels like it pushes you in a different way where it's like, maybe I want to lie to this person because I'm on like a lies playthrough based on the other decisions I made or something. But you don't actually have to pick out the lie. You have to pick out the thing that makes them more human. So why not call it like peas humanity?
Why not just call it
peas
Pinocchio?
on Earth? Or just Pinocchio. There are so many possible names that are less stupid and are less misleading for the player.
Mm-hmm.
Not that obviously being misled about the lying really does much, if anything at all,
Yeah.
for your experience with the game. But I guess there is like an ending locked behind it, though. So.
Yeah. No, but to go back to the initial thing, the initial question, though, I just
Oh yeah,
felt like
please do.
No, to me, it felt like the Pinocchio stuff didn't feel forced, personally, and I just was very like surprised by that because it seemed like it would be hokey and stupid, but like in a good way.
Yeah, I will say when I started the game and before I had started the game, I had assumed that the Pinocchio stuff would be hokey and stupid. And I am coming to you now to say that I do not think it is hokey and stupid. I just think it's like a little bit off for me on a me personal level.
Yeah,
Not
yeah.
anything else. Which is why I do want to talk to you, especially considering like you probably picked up on like an infinite number. I don't remember the blue fairy in Pinocchio.
Yeah, she's who brings
That's
him
nothing to me.
Yeah, who brings him to life at the end. Is the blue fairy?
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there time travel in Pinocchio?
I don't think so. I'm not the most familiar with Pinocchio. I am familiar with the Disney movie, which I think it does change from the source material, and I've watched the Del Toro one that came out recently, and that also is different, I think, than the source material. So, like, the source material was like what do you call that? Like serialized, like chapters in a newspaper or whatever. So
that's what I would call it.
Yeah, like more episodic. So I think like adaptations, like pick and choose what stuff to include and completely leave out other things.
Yeah, I wanted to ask mostly because that seems to be what Sophia's powers are, essentially, is like a time-based power, because she can... It's implied that when you die, she's reversing time to when you were not dead.
Yeah.
And things like that. So, like... And obviously she can apparently do other stuff because they had her, like, rooted into a chair at the end of the game. But, like, there is... like, that was something that to me stood out as being a little bit strange, because it's something I absolutely don't remember from the source material. And it's just sort of... It's their version of the, like, the undead curse, or... the hunter's dream, like something that just keeps bringing you back.
Yeah, I think in the Del Toro movie, he can just die and the fairy brings him back to life. But like each time he dies, he has to like, there's like an hourglass that she turns over, and he has to wait longer before he can come back to life. So there's like a death loop thing in that movie. I don't know if that comes from the source material or if that's a coincidence.
Benefit of the doubt, I'll say it definitely comes from the source material, 100%. But yeah, I don't know. It was just like playing this game and trying to, like, the Mad Donkey is like one of the first bosses in the game that you fight, notably one that doesn't have a second phase. And that obviously makes me think of the Isle of Misfit Boys. What was it called?
Pleasure Island.
Pleasure Island, there it is.
Yeah. All the boys become jackasses.
All have like animal neck.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they become and so like obviously that's something that comes from the source material, and there's lots of stuff that I'm sure that I'm not picking up on.
Yeah, I really liked Red Fox and Black Cat. Because like in the, at least in the Disney version, like it's like Honest John and I can't remember the cat's name. They like are the ones who tempt him to like go like just do whatever he wants. and ultimately go to Pleasure Island. So like I liked the incorporation of those characters. Like the there's actually just like anthropomorphic animals in the source material. So like I thought that like the animal masks was like a cool way to incorporate that stuff.
Yeah, and you were correct. Like that, and the fact that they were able to sort of thematically tie it into within the narrative, like these two rival gangs. I forget one of them, but one of them is called the Bastards.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's like the Black Rabbit, whatever, gang. Like there's a lot of cool things going on that I was able to pick up on, and then just other stuff that I wasn't. But it is cool because like I don't fucking remember Honest John and the factory to dealer incentives or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I remember the highlights. I was like 10 the last time I watched a Disney movie and have not engaged in
I was disappointed there was no giant whale. I was really holding out to get swallowed by a whale. There is the submarine, which is like cute.
But the submarine is explicitly a shark, though.
Yeah. It's close enough.
It has teeth. I was also mad that there's no Monstro.
Yeah.
All of those are correct things. But I do want to say it's interesting because I bet that there's a lot of people like me who do not have the knowledge really of the original story and will get to experience like some of these things that are like spoiled for you if you know the material. And I put that in quotes for everybody who isn't on camera right now. In terms of like you said with Black Cat and Red Fox, like they act like the most suspicious people in the world, and the game has a weird habit of making everybody speak out loud about their betrayals,
right?
Which is weird. But you could hypothetically on your first encounter not know if they were friendly or not, and to have it like kind of go through the story and stuff.
Did you
is cool.
Fight them at the end of the game?
No, I gave them fruit.
Okay, I was really pissed because like I kept waiting for that storyline to pay off where like I'm going to be nice to them every time and maybe they'll help me with like a late game boss fight or something. When I got to Black Cat, I gave him the gold coin fruit. But then I had just gone and spent all my gold coin fruit because I had respect my character, and then when I got to Red Fox, I didn't have any, so I didn't have any other option but to kill her. Like I ran away, went back down the elevator, went and got more gold coin fruit, and hoped that it would let me come back and give it to her, but it doesn't. So I had to kill her. So I was wondering what happens at the end of their quest line if you don't kill her.
Absolutely nothing.
Aww.
You give her the fruit, she gives you her mask, and then she's never seen or heard from again.
That's lame.
It is. It's very lame.
Like
I also was hoping that they would show up for a fight or something.
Yeah, because like as you said, like,
and now I just wish that I had killed them.
Yeah,
because that's more bosses to fight.
Black Cat is probably blind in the world somewhere in my playthrough. Because he lived, but yeah, like as you said, like they're introduced so suspiciously, and it's like I really wanted them to do like a subversion where they ended up helping you in the end.
Yeah, but no, get fucked. I guess.
Get fucked.
I don't know. It's it is a bummer though. Because I do wish that there was more to it, and that's true of kind of everything. Not everything, but like all of the character stuff, like. Many of the characters have like, because there's achievements that pop up whenever you like complete a character's quest line and be like, you've heard the full story of fucking Vanini now, and I'm like, neat, glad I have. But then like at the end he's just like, anyway, here's like $20, and then he just goes back to being a vendor.
Yeah,
like there's never anything like nothing ever feels like it's at risk or anything. Like the one character who dies, when the moment that you speak to them, they're like, hey, what's up? I'm gonna die soon. I'm dying at this moment, in fact, and will be dead before you know it. And I'm like, cool, so I should just expect to not care when this old lady dies. And so there's like, never did I think that I was going to lose access to a shop or like any mechanical retribution for anything that I was doing. So it felt very low stakes the whole way. And then like when you kill Alidoro or the guy pretending to be Alidoro, you don't even get to fight him. You just hit him once and he just fucking falls down.
I liked that.
Why?
I think
is there like a...
I think because it drives home, I think, through gameplay that he was a complete fraud.
Like, not capable of defending himself
Like,
in
at
any
all,
way.
yeah. Like, it's all a front. Like, I liked that, personally.
That's fair. I'll give you that one. That one's fine. But I do wish that most of the other because that one even does, like, it ends with, like, resolution.
Yeah,
there was stuff happening.
Yeah, that really highlights the difference between this, I think, and an actual FromSoft game. Is like, this game would never, ever, ever do anything that's not in the name of, like, player convenience. Like, it's basically, like if you sanded all of those corners off of a FromSoft game, that's what this is.
This is a perfectly round From Software game. Yeah. The game it turns the numbers blue when you have enough souls to level up.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of convenient, but
it is convenient.
Yeah.
So you get an indication when you're gonna level up. It indicates anywhere that there's dialogue to have happen. Like every vendor is safe at all times. You can't attack and kill NPCs. Your blade goes right through them until there's like an actual fight happening, including NPCs who have no purpose other than to be a fight. Like the owl doctor, who you could fight, but you have to talk to him first so he can say a few lines of dialogue. If you try attacking him before that, your sword just goes right through him. There are so many edges sanded off. It feels very safe.
Yeah, but one thing I thought was really cool that you would not have seen, because you didn't get the bad ending. Geppetto takes your heart and puts it in, or uses it to create a real boy with the big ergo fucking vortex or whatever at the end of the game. And so, like, he brings his son, Carlo, I think, back to life. Yeah. And there's like I don't know if it's post-credits or whatever, there's like an ending scene where it's like Geppetto opening the door of the hotel, and he turns around and looks at you, and then like the camera pans back, and all the NPCs are dead in the hotel. Like Carlo had just killed them. Then, if you boot the game back up, and you go into the hotel, they've all been replaced by creepy puppets of themselves. And it was like
pretty cool.
Such a cool moment, like how like fucked up it was. And I feel like the achievements say that that's the least like common ending to get. So like not that many people have seen that, like relative to who have played the game.
Also, if you're me, when it presented you with the option of just going right into New Game Plus, I just hit OK because I knew I wasn't going to be playing the game again anyway. And so I didn't even go back to the hotel in my ending.
Yeah.
And so there could have been something there, because in my ending, you, not Geppetto, who is dead, you rebuild Sophia, like a body for Sophia, and put her ergo into it. So she could just be back also.
Yeah, she probably is.
Yeah.
Like, I booted it back up to see if it would give me the option to try the boss fight again, and it doesn't.
Makes sense. You heard about what an easy time I had with
Yeah.
it. You're like, I can't be outdone.
Oh, and also the guy, the alchemist with the top hat, who wants you to give him the gold coin fruit.
Yeah, or whatever.
I totally called that he was going to be a more significant character, because like he gets a post-credit scene where he's like blah 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 blah, something about Dorothy. The next game's going to be a Wizard of Oz
organization.
Game. Yeah. Like the fucking League of Extraordinary Gentlemen guy. But yeah, because like I was like, he was introduced, and like I knew like alchemists were like a big part of the story, and I'm like, he's tied to this gold coin tree, which I feel like the introduction of that as a mechanic like seemed significant. I don't know if it's just because it's a golden tree that it stood out, but I kept waiting for him to do a thing, and he never does. I was like, there's got to be something up with him, and then
you would think
lo
so.
and behold, he's sequel setup.
He is sequel setup. I think, I am not a big fan of that whole ending sequence. As somebody who was like I don't see the through line necessarily between Pinocchio and the Wizard of Oz. It doesn't that doesn't line up in my head whatsoever. Like the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen is also kind of a hodgepodge, but to do essentially the same idea and then go that distant for the first two entries is really weird. I will admit I did not see him being like a significant character. I especially didn't expect him to be Nick Fury. So that was at the very least, that was unexpected for me, I guess. I do want to say that my second big problem that I think is baked into the mechanics of the game is that there's just too much shit in it.
Yeah. Too many secondary
and that
mechanics.
Tree, oh, fuck that stupid tree. I didn't even go to that damn tree. Like, I think I went there twice or something because I was ever forced to. And so I just had the 16 gold coin fruits that I refused to use on the dumbass cube that I didn't want to have.
Yeah, I feel like...
just another thing.
Yeah, I feel like this was like a role reversal. Because, like, I feel like there have been other games where you're like... There's this mechanic and like I think it's annoying, but like I have to engage with it. And then I'm always like, oh, you could have just like not done it. But
and this time I'm like, well, I didn't do
yeah,
it.
well, because for me, I also thought the mechanic was annoying, how it took time to like charge them up, but I always had to go every time I went back to the hotel, I had to go to the gold coin tree, I had to get the gold coins, had to go get like wish stones for my fucking wish cube, and resented doing it. But I had to. I don't know why.
Well, I hate that it's like it's on the screen when you rest. Like you rest as a stargazer, and it just is like, hey, the next gold coin fruit's ripe in 4 minutes, and I'm like, I don't fucking care that the gold coin fruits are gonna be ripe. Do you want me to leave the game that I'm playing to go pick fruit off a tree so that I can get more fruit in the future? That is the antithesis of why I am playing this game. It felt like such a bizarre mechanic, and I really disliked it, like being so emphasized. Like the gold coin fruits are given like MacGuffin level narrative emphasis that they don't deserve. They barely come up at all. You use one to make a cure for the petrification disease for a lady who's gonna die anyway. So it's like I don't know. It's just like a whole thing, and that's not even the half of it. like when you're in combat, right? You've got the cube, you've got blood vials, you've got fucking fable arts and the
Legion
fucking
canisters.
Legion arm.
Yeah,
and like so many things to think about. And I remember I went into the final boss because this one is classic me. I went into the final boss and I said, well, I haven't been using anything for the whole game except my basic attacks and very occasionally the two ones that are on face buttons. Essentially, Legion arm and the fable arts. I was like, I'm gonna do stuff in this one. So I got my grinder out and I was doing grinder stuff, and I had consumables, and I just fucking died over and over again because I was trying to like manipulate the stupid belt menu and do things in that when I should have just been playing the game in the way that is fun to do. I feel like there's just so much creep in making this game just so full of trash that I didn't care about.
Yeah.
And like,
I feel
a
like,
lot of it is just like, this is what Dark Souls does. We got to have fire paper in the game.
yeah. It feels like that's how they were trying to like distinguish themselves a little bit by having like more combat options, because like they are all actually useful options, but like it is a lot to manage. Like it's got that like too many things syndrome where like you're gonna end up completely ignoring some of them because like taking advantage of all of them is just like too much of like a cognitive load.
And it's true, it really is just it's just a little bit too much.
Yeah, and if you never use the Spectre, then like the Wish cube is like completely useless.
Right. I did use the Spectre, but I just never used the cube with the Spectre.
Like most of them give it buffs, so like that's kind of like what it's for.
No, I was reading through. Also, did you use any of the ones for the Spectre that weren't just the health regen? Because I looked through and I was like, these all seem so specific. Yeah, like they would not be useful.
I think there was one that gave it like more defense or like more attack or something, and like I tried that one and it just didn't seem as good.
Right.
So no.
Yeah, well, because that's like most of the time when you have like the Spectre out, the reason that you want it there is so that you can just charge R2 on the boss
so
while it's hitting it.
Yeah, it can tank for you.
So having it deal more damage is not really like, that's not a selling point for me. I was like, I don't even need like an interdimensional traveler. If you just give me like a Matador's red coat that I can throw over there, that's all I really need him for. So, I used the cube when I first got it, and was really confused about how it was supposed to work because we didn't have gold coin fruits yet,
right?
In the halcyon days, and so I used it because it said it recharged, and then it didn't recharge because you need to have the stones to put in the cube. So, I don't know. I think that was kind of the straw for me with the cube, is I didn't understand it the first time, and then I looked at it when they did explain it, and I said, fuck you.
Yeah, I was kind of like that with, like, the spells in Bloodborne. When those are interesting, I'm like, tiny Tonitrus? The fuck does that mean? And then I just, like, put it in a box and never thought about it again.
Exactly, yeah. Until you do your all arcane playthrough.
Not a judgment.
And then you're like, the tiny Tonitrus actually sucks, and so I'll put it in a box and forget.
I always thought that. I feel like that's like the first one you get, and I always thought that was strange because it seems like not a spell. It seems like an item.
It seems like
I always thought that was really confusing. But anyway,
I was about to go off about Bloodborne, which I shouldn't do.
I'm sure arcane stuff is cool. I just feel like it's introduced in a really weird way.
It is. And honestly, kind of similar in this game. Like, I noted that there were several, like, there are several weapons that all seemed like the coolest weapons in the game that scaled off the advance stat, which I still think applies even if you move the... Like, I think that the damage you do from status effects feeds off of the advanced stat.
Yeah, like throwables.
Stuff like that. Which are also do so much damage. I'm a little sad I never used them before.
That's how I, like, beat the late game bosses.
Yeah, you just fucking wail on them with, like, thermite and shit. It deals like a trillion
like, acid damage is so good. Like, literally melt half their health bar away.
I wish... that I had known, but I didn't. But I also, like, in Dark Souls, like, I threw, like, what even are the throwables in Dark Souls? I was gonna say a Molotov cocktail, but that's
fire bombs.
Yeah, fire bombs. Like, I've thrown some black fire bombs when I start with them to kill the demon at the beginning.
Yeah, another area where the convenience factor is highlighted is, like, it's hard to miss with a throwable in this one, in Lies of P.
True.
It's like Dark Souls, where it's like a weird commitment that you might miss.
Yeah, and the items are not, like, super common.
Yeah.
And, like, you never want to spend, like, 10,000 souls on black fire bombs or whatever.
Right.
To get, like, 5 of them or whatever. Yeah. I don't know. It's not like I resent that they're in there, and I don't really count them toward, like, the number of things that are in the game that just, like, stretch out its mechanics till they're unrecognizable. But it is weird, and I didn't engage with them that much. And I don't really feel like it made my experience that much worse. Especially considering, like, I never put anything... We can talk about the P organ if there's fucking anything there that you want to talk about.
Not really. I feel like... I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it, because it almost felt like you get quartz rarely enough that, like, it's also another one of those things you kind of just want to ignore. But you shouldn't, because that's how, like, you get more healing vials and stuff. But yeah, like, it felt like it was in a weird middle ground where like I don't know, I would like forget about it.
Correct. Yeah. It's not that I would forget about it necessarily. It's just like there were a few things in it that I felt were like I think it's kind of an interesting system. Maybe like a step too far in terms of being a little bit overcomplicated, because you have to like you get the abilities from the quartz when you put them in, but you only get the ability from the circle when you fill it out. So I can imagine some confusion where like you don't get the abilities until you fill it out, but that's not actually true, etc., etc. But like with all of that in mind, like some of the abilities are legitimately like game changing, very strong abilities. But a lot of them you put it in and then you just go like, I hope that is the 5% additional help that I needed for this
Yeah,
boss.
you just don't notice most of them.
Yeah. So it's like when I think about a build, so to speak, in like a Dark Souls game, I'm thinking like, oh, did you play like with strength weapons? I'm not thinking about in Lies of P. Like I would be like, I played a motivity character. I used this weapon. I wouldn't say I went for the more damage when discharged 1 through 2 and etc. shit. But I never put anything in the ones that were for like Fable arts because I didn't really ever use them. And I feel like that's a weird compounding problem because if you don't engage with them at the beginning of the game, then at the end of the game, you're just not going to have the resources to ever use them. Like I could use a Fable art once in a boss fight and that was it. So you would never use it outside of a boss fight because you might not have it charged for the boss fight. And then in the boss fight, you have to pick a moment to use it one time.
Right.
So
yeah, they are pretty good.
Damn, some of them do a lot.
Yeah,
The one that
dealt
I
up a
had
lot of
on the hammer was like it dealt like 4,000 damage to the final boss on just like one hit. I was like, that's pretty good. Should have been using this more, I guess.
Yeah, I landed the final kill on Romeo, King of Puppets, with a full charged up Fable attack thing, and it felt real good.
I wish I could remember what weapon I was even using for the King of Puppets, because I it may have been giant saw blade with the clock sword handle, because I know I used that for like a decent amount of time.
I wanted to use the clock sword, but it just didn't seem at all good for my build.
That's fair. It was my weapon was enormous, and so like the fact that it had like it was a fast weapon.
Yeah.
It just like worked. I like the R2 was really fast. So that's probably what I was using for that fight, which means that it was doing 25% less damage on any stab attacks. So I don't know, maybe that's why I found that boss fight really hard. Hard to say. It's not hard to say. Yes, it is.
So one thing we haven't touched on at all yet, which stood out to me a lot while playing, is the actual like level design.
Yeah.
Because like one thing I think that's often underrated and overlooked about what makes Souls games good is the level design. And I don't think I've ever played a Souls like a true one. Not like the Hollow Knights and things that you brought up earlier, but like that had even tried to have creative level design. And this game, I think, does like the bare minimum. Like it has like the simplest version of levels that like loop back and have shortcuts, but it's like the most basic version of that you could have. Which isn't bad. Like, I think it's, like, solid and serviceable. But, like, I really was craving more from it, especially, like, the further in it got.
Yeah, I think that the way that I view it is I do really like the levels themselves. They are, like, I don't know if this is the best way to call it, but, like, snackable. They're levels that have, like, short segments that you can easily get through in, like, a short period of time. But, like, are fun enough that you do want to keep pressing onward with it. But the levels are entirely linear. Like the one that stands out to me is the apparently didn't stand out enough for me to remember its name. The area that you're in right before the Grand Exhibition. That's like a little. It's like a weird city street.
Oh yeah,
level,
like
but it's
Elysium
indoors.
Boulevard. Oh no, the arcade.
No. Yeah, there it is. The arcade.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's like a
that level
mall.
starts you. It is like a mall. That's probably what I should have said because that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
It starts you in like the center of it with like multiple branching paths, 4 paths, one of which is locked with a door. The other ones you're free to go down. But all they are is one of them goes down and there's a locked door. And then one of them goes down and there's the key to that other door. So it isn't really a choice.
right.
You just go down one and get the key and then go down the other and get the door. And that is just sort of like how every level is structured. It may be like a big quote unquote labyrinthian area with like you have to go through a building with a bunch of different rooms in it. But you're just going from point A to point B and there's never really any decision making. Which isn't necessarily bad, but it does not really capture the same thing. Like putting shortcuts back to the start in a purely linear game is a different still cool,
Yeah.
still useful, but it's a different sense than when you are exploring and find a ladder or a door that gets you back to where you started.
Yeah.
not as
Yeah,
exciting.
they're not bad levels by any means. It's just if they're gonna make a sequel to this, which I assume they will, like that's an obvious, clear area to like improve. That would like I think elevate the game a bit. Yeah, it does have a cool moment. Like I did not at all expect the cathedral to link back to the hotel. I thought that was pretty
Right.
cool. But yeah, like that's about it. Like I don't think I was ever surprised other than that when I opened a shortcut. But yeah, like you're not exploring an area. Yeah, it's like hitting a checkpoint or something, like it feels very like mechanical.
Yeah, exactly. It is like you're just going from place to place, and I think they did want the hotel to be Firelink Shrine.
Oh yeah.
Like every area is just either direct, like for some reason built underneath of it,
Yeah.
or has
Connects back, yeah.
one street that goes somewhere else. Like you can see a lot of Krat in the game, but if you like looked at Krat from an overhead perspective, it would literally just be like the hotel in the middle, and then like 4 zones coming out from the sides.
Yeah, like it's a castle.
Exactly. Like you just don't. Yeah, it feels more like the Resident Evil 8 map than it does a map of Yarnum or any city like in reality.
Yeah, I mean, I do appreciate that though. Like it's my favorite thing about like the world design is that everything links back to it. And I thought it was really, really cool that from the top of the castle of the last zone on the island, you can see it in the distance, like in the skybox. Like the hotel is that big. That I thought that was a really great visual detail.
And while we're talking about that at all, the visuals of this game just generally are really solid.
Yeah.
Graphically, it is beautiful. I think they did a very good job of being able to like. Even I was able to like discern enemies from the background at all times.
Yeah.
Which is a feat that few games can pull off. I thought it was a visual delight. What a dumb thing to say.
Well, and I love the like that the puppets in this are like stylized as like automatons. Like the cool like steampunk like spin on Pinocchio I think is really interesting. And I think a lot of like the like creature or monster design, the puppet designs are really cool. And I like how like they get corrupted later in the game and there's like stuff that like invades the puppets and is like moving it around. Like all very creative and cool animation work. I think you kind of brought that up when you're talking about the like wind up moves in the first half. But like like kind of like twitching and stuff. Like it's all like really, really cool thematically.
Yeah, they had a very strong visual identity and really stuck with it throughout the whole game. They tried, I'm going to say this with sadness in my heart. so that you know I'm not just being snarky here. But they did try and fail to do the Bloodborne twist, where midway through the game it turns out that there's like a greater influence on the events occurring. But they blow the secret immediately from the beginning. There are some cool foreshadowing moments, like you can find the like carcasses, I guess they're called, like the mutants, like dead ones, like splattered against walls and stuff. But it's just and they even do like a thing, like there's an area in the basement of the mall, in the wine cellar, where you fight a clown puppet, and then some of the zombies bust out of the cages, and then they fight each other. So like you know that they are opposing factions, just on like an instinctual level. So they do cool things with it, but it really isn't the same. It goes through. It's too much of a through line throughout the entire thing. It never gets like Lovecraftian or Eldritch. It's just essentially like science fiction and fantasy.
Yeah. And another detail I really liked from the final area is there are humans there that some of the puppets are based off of, which I thought was like a really cool detail. Like I noticed it with like the guys with the rapiers. I'm like, this is like a human like version of like that like puppet from earlier. And yeah, I just thought that was like a really cool world building thing.
Yeah. I would have loved to have I obviously did not do this, but it would be cool if the different, because there are 3 enemy types that have their own like amulets that you can use that increase your damage against them, like puppets, carcasses, and humans.
Yeah.
And it would be cool if different, that like the later into the game you go, more of them were like a combination of the two.
Yeah.
Like if you wore both of the like the carcass and the puppet one.
Do they ever do that where like a human has like a puppet arm, like prosthetic or something? Is that ever a thing? Because that seems like a missed opportunity.
That's a good question.
Yeah,
I don't actually know about that. They do a lot of puppet carcass hybridizing.
Yeah, which is cool.
Yeah, and it shows sort of like the sort of the plant-like adaptability of the petrification disease. But they never really do, which I guess is kind of all 3, right? Because those are diseased humans.
Yeah, they had a great opportunity. Like the second time you fight the Black Rabbit Brotherhood, like the big guy who you killed could be like put back together with puppet parts.
Right. Yeah, I didn't see that. I actually saw this in a video that I watched later. This didn't happen in my playthrough. But when you kill if the last person that's alive is the like, I think they call him the battle maniac of the Black Rabbit Brotherhood, the one who like takes the sword at the end of the cutscene in the first fight. If he's the last one of the 3 alive, when the guy busts out of the coffin, I'm back. He says like, even if it's only temporary, it's good to see you back with us, brother. And they like imply that it was like the alchemists like
who brought him back,
temporarily brought him back to life. What does that mean at all? And why is he not just like, put together with puppet parts and animated with fucking algae? Like they have all of the technology in the game already,
or what
to do like a cool mutant thing.
It would maybe be a little too high concept, but awesome if they had him put back together with puppet parts and then the other 3 like puppet him with string.
Also,
like,
would be cool.
Yeah, there's like an upper level to the arena and they like run around with puppet strings. Like that'd be kind of neat.
Yeah. I think that this kind of bleeds into a conversation we've already had. I'll be brief with it. But when it comes to all of the like 2-phase bosses and bosses that have 2 health bars, I think that there's like, in the cost analysis of building a boss, you have to assume that there's a level before the boss. And so if you made 2 bosses, you'd have to make 2 levels and 2 bosses. And bosses are the most expensive thing to make, really. And so they do a lot of 2-phase bosses that are, you have to do a little bit more work on the boss, but you kind of get 2 bosses out of it, and you didn't have to make like a new visual mesh or whatever else in order to make it work. And so I feel like they totally would have done something like that, but they didn't want to they would rather just reuse the work that they had already done than have to go through a process of animating and coming up with mechanics for him being puppeted.
Right.
Even though that would have been sick as hell. Hey, the music in this game kicks a lot of ass.
Yeah, it was pretty good.
We were talking briefly in the break, and this is the thing I was going to bring up. This is a Korean developer. This is their first like action game, I think. I don't quote me on that because I might be wrong, or quote me on it to be like, look at how wrong this guy is. Don't trust him. That's fine. But he does. They apparently maintain or potentially developed, I didn't look it up, a game that's called like DJ Max. It's like a rhythm game, and the song Feel, it's one of the records. It's I think the first one that you find is apparently from that game, but remixed into like a more period appropriate set. I found that really strange, but it also sort of explained why the records exist at all. Like, where are these songs coming from? Why is it important? It's like, this is more of like a developer flourish, I think, than it is anything else. Yeah, but a lot of the songs are really good. And the boss music is also like, I mean, debatably like pretty close to From's level in terms of like how well it fits with the bosses, and the intensity of it, I think, is pretty cool.
Yeah. No, I liked it a lot as well. And I don't know, I always like little mechanics like that, like the record player and like the piano and stuff. But like I always feel like you mess with them a couple times and you never touch them again. I wish like there's like more of incentive to like interact with it or something, but maybe that's a me thing.
Nah, not really. I mean, like, I don't think, like, I wasn't going out of my way to like, I mean, I did literally go out of my way to put on every record and listen to it to the end.
I think I did like the first 2 and then never ever went back and interacted with the record player.
Yeah, it increases your humanity, which is why I did it.
Yeah,
like,
I didn't know.
You get the message.
Yeah.
And I just didn't know what that was doing, but I wanted to progress it as much as I could so I could find out.
Right. Another
so that's why
cool little detail I liked that it took me a while to notice is there's a cat in the hotel that will show up in different spots. And at the beginning, it doesn't like you because you're a puppet. It can tell. And then, like, the further into the game you get, like, I guess if you increase your humanity, it'll let you pet it. So I thought that was, like, a cool progression.
And eventually, if you continue doing it, or I guess if depending on how human you get, I don't know what the end point of this is, but I got to a point where you could pick the cat up.
So I never did.
But I never actually saw the cat get angry at me. I didn't notice it until I was like 2/3 of the way through the game.
Yeah. Like I think
so. Not the kind of thing for me.
I think the first time I went into the blacksmith's shop, I can't remember her name, but the cat was just sitting behind her, and I noticed it, and I walked up, and it said interact, and it just hisses at you.
Yeah, I don't think I ever saw it there. I only ever saw it on the luggage upstairs.
Yeah, and it only, I think, moves there after the hotel gets attacked.
Damn. Well,
it sits up above
very much at all.
The merchant that is not Vanini's butler, but the other guy, the other butler.
Pagliacci.
Yeah, Pagliacci. Yeah. But Doctor, I am Pagliacci. It'll sit up behind him too, like up on the shelf, and I think there's like at least one other spot. But anyway, just a cool world building thing. Like it's like I like those little details that like totally didn't need to be in there, but like add something if you notice it. One other random thing that just came to my mind. There are these like I can't remember what they're called. These like little things that you get. Are they called like ciphers or something? That you take to Vanini.
The cryptic vessels.
Yeah, cryptic vessels, and like he'll translate them, and you get like a little essentially like a little side quest that's like, oh, go do this thing and that thing, and you can like find an item or whatever. I thought those were like pretty cool, but like weren't developed at all. Like the first one I thought was like really interesting. It's like, go hit the puppet that's hanging off the bridge. I'm like, a cool like environmental detail. I'll go interact with that. It gives you like a key to a room like in another level, and like I don't know. I just thought it seemed like a really cool like extra little thing for like to reward you for actually like opening the inventory and reading the shit that you were picking up.
Yeah, no, you're 100% correct, and I was similarly disappointed in it. Because the first one is really great. It sends you on a little side quest. It doesn't take an extremely long time, but you do have to like put things together to an extent in order to figure out what it is. And then there's like to me, I think the most prominent one is the one that's given to you by fucking Gus. I don't remember the dog, like the other treasure hunter.
Oh yeah.
That tells you about the essentially the thing he's standing in front of. It's like a gate, and I remember reading it like many times. It was just like, it says like you'll find the treasure at the end of the new road, and I was like, oh, the new road, because I had just done the one where I hit the puppet down. I was like, I got to piece together because the photo just shows the grate.
You have to follow the
okay,
yellow brick road.
The yellow brick road, and I called the Wizard of Oz thing right then. No, I was really like going over in my head. I was like, where in the swamp is there anything that looks like a new road? They mean the bridges or whatever. And then the solution was just like, beat the boss and then come back. And the door is just open. And when you talk to Hugo, that I remembered his name, it's Hugo. He just goes like, hey, I opened it. I figured it out. And I'm like, well, why did I even have the fucking vessel if you're just going to open the gate and then walk down the hallway? Like, so yeah, I was a little sad. I played like 10 minutes of New Game Plus. There's one early on that you find the thing for way later. That if you go to this particular area and use the check ground gesture, you get like a coat.
Yeah, you just get a costume
of somebody. Yeah. And I tried to do it before seeing the cryptic vessel, and it's not there unless you have the cryptic vessel, which is another thing that I wish wasn't the case.
Yeah.
I wish that if you knew about these things, you could go do them. You can get the key for the door by throwing something at the puppet, stuff like that.
Yeah, that would be better.
So, yeah, pretty medium on them as a whole, but I do agree with the call out. They are cool. They're like the paintings from Elden Ring.
Yeah.
But I like them a little bit better because there's
think.
actually like words.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just one other stray thing I had. Did you find the riddle puppet, the king of riddles?
Oh yeah.
I thought that was that's up there in like top 3 moments of the game. Or you just like walk in and you just see like a fucked up puppet like strapped into the wall through like fucking telephone cords, and he's like twitching all over the place. I thought that was so rad.
It's extremely sick and also rad and great. I thought it was super good. He ended up being like one of the more interesting characters in the game during that little speech, because it was like, now he has like, there's like a motivation to what he's doing, and like he is taking the whole existential robot thing that this game doesn't really do as much with, despite it literally being about one turning into a human. And like actually gives like a little talk about it. So this is really cool. Yeah. I thought it's a great visual. It's a great like narrative moment.
Yeah, he's actually a puppet as well. Like I think some of the most interesting stuff like that comes from the other puppet. Like what's his name? We called him Pagliacci. Pagliacci. Yeah, talking about whatever the woman's name was. Lady whatever at the hotel.
Lady Pagliacci.
Yeah, Lady Pagliacci. Like him talking about her was way more interesting than whatever she said.
Yes. Yeah, because he even pulls you outside and is like, hey, let's have like a 1-to-1. as two robots who like have grown a soul. And it's interesting because like the narrative, because like we didn't really talk about the story all that much. A cult of wizards creates a disease in order to advance humanity. Geppetto makes all of the robots in the city that people have been using go crazy to kill all of the people because he wants to, that's his plan to get rid of the disease. Then there's like a meeting of the minds, etc. It's not really the most, as is probably expected from this game, not the most original plot in the world. But I mean, it's not uninteresting. Like, it's still good. But the fact that it seems like every robot essentially has the capability of being human, or like human-like, having an ego, as they call it, is cool. And it's also kind of explained by the fact that Ergo is essentially like human souls.
Right.
Which in a roundabout way makes Ergo souls again in terms of the currency. Which is really heartbreaking. But yeah, I don't know. It was just a cool thing. And that's also plays into the King of Riddles and his shit. So like, yeah, very good stuff. I mean, I'm fresh out of stuff to talk about.
We've been going long enough. We need our Fable thoughts. Fable art.
You know what is an interesting thing about this game is that
Pinnochio.
Pinnochio's in it. Did you notice?
Timothy Chalamet Pinocchio.
One of the interesting things about this game is that first of all, the voice acting is actually really good. But second of all, the voice acting, despite everyone hypothetically being Italian, not all that many people speak with an Italian accent, and then you have it's Lorenzini Vanini, who
Alfredo.
Yeah, in the most absurd goddamn Italian accent I've ever heard in my life. And whenever he says a word with an R in it, that word lasts 4 minutes. Because he's just like, oh, thanks for bringing me this cryptic vessel. And has like, rolls it so long. It's patently absurd. And I do love him for it.
Yeah, the contrast, I think, makes it hit extra hard.
It really does. And that's why I think that we should have Lorenzini Vanini thoughts.
Okay. My Lorenzini Vanini thoughts brought to you by Vanini Corp or whatever.
By Tostino's Pizza Rolls.
Yeah. This game, what to even say, where to even start? I think I alluded to at the beginning. I feel like a lot was said about this game, like when it came out. Like people were kind of like rushing to give their 2 cents on what they thought about it. And I disagreed with most of the stuff people said. Like I really don't think it's as hard as people make it out to be. And I don't know, like, yeah, it's a little bumpy to get into, but like, I feel like in a good way. I think like the fact that it's new and not just a Dark Souls sequel, and like it has its own quirks and stuff, and you can't summon real people. I think it kind of hit a level of challenge that like it felt like to play the first Dark Souls to me, where like it felt like there was like a significant like curve, you know, like hump to get over to like get into it, and each boss felt like a new like wall that had to be cleared. So like I thought that like that it was a really satisfying level of challenge for a good bit of it. Yeah, I really surprisingly enjoyed the Pinocchio theming. You know, I hope the next game is not called Lies of D, because Dorothy is going to be in it, because we can't have Lies of P and Lies of D. It is not. That would be illegal for that to happen. But totally looking forward to that. Like whatever that ends up being. Their weird Wizard of Oz game. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how much else to say about it. Like it's weird as we were getting at like the whole beginning of the podcast, like to know like what to think. Like I'm interested to see how this is going to influence other Souls likes. I'm interested to see like the if this will have like a noticeable impact on the subgenre, like, 5 to 10 years from now. Are there going to be a lot more games like that close to like the From Software feel? Is it going to like become like Doom? Like, are we gonna end up like maybe because of this game? Maybe I'm being a little bit too sensationalist, but like is this gonna change the name of the subgenre to not just be so? They would be a great thing because Souls like is a stupid name, but to be something different and not just like Doom clone was before it became first person shooters. So I'm really interested in that, but only time will tell, I guess.
I really thought that you were going to imply that you would rather they be called Souls clones than Souls likes.
No. I'd like them to have some different name that isn't stupid.
Right.
But yeah, like I don't know, like overall, please, like I know we talked about doing this game before we ever decided on it, and I was just not looking forward to it. I thought I wouldn't like it, and was pleasantly surprised. So. Yeah, I don't know. Kind of hard to like sum up, but I guess I'll have a little bit of a vanilla final thoughts there.
I think that's fair. I would like to say to start out my final thoughts. I'm sorry, my my Vanini thoughts by saying that this game, that Bloodborne is my favorite game that's ever been made, and therefore this game could have been a lot worse than it is, and I still would have liked it. It has enough of that DNA in it that I was more or less predisposed to be into what this game was trying to do. So yeah, I enjoyed this game a lot. I thought it was really good mechanically. I thought that they managed to do the Pinnochio stuff in a way that wasn't like literally putting clown shoes on and walking around in front of my television while I'm trying to play Dark Souls, which is kind of what I expected from it. And so pleasantly surprised is a way to put it. Also just like enraptured. Like when I was playing this game, I really never wanted to stop playing the game. And I think that that's really good. It highlights one of the things that it does that could be seen as bad is it highlights some of the things in the genre that it slavishly copies, but does not really consider. And it made me think again about how much I hate the fact that there's like 10 different upgrade materials in Elden Ring and how that shouldn't be a thing, but they've ported that straight over. And they have stupid names. It's like the Dark Moon, a moonstone of the Covenant. Run that by one editor, please. So that is my big takeaway. Mechanically speaking, if you're a Dark Souls fan, if you're just a fan of these games generally, this game rules. It's extremely fun. You should play it. People did, like you said, made a big deal about it being hard. It's not that hard. It takes a little bit of time to get used to, is how I would define it. And once again, that's coming from us who have played like fucking 6,000 games. So
that's true.
Everyone's experience is going to be different, but like, we are not big dick measuring competitive dudes. And so when we say this game isn't that hard, we're not trying to be like, y'all are babies or whatever. People who are average at the Souls games will make it work in this one, I think. And the game provides you lots of ways to make it easier. So, it's cool. It's cool. I will say that the thing that I'm taking away from this game, in terms of my thoughts going forward, a lot of it is just, it's an interesting reflection on how I view games in the industry because of how similar it is to the games. And is this, like you said, cementing the mechanics of a genre in the way that first person shooter mechanics have become ubiquitous? Because we don't talk about things like, click to shoot, right click to do an alt fire. Like that's just Bog's industry standard at this point. And so it does make me wonder, like, what is the future? Like you said, I think we're kind of on the same page on that. So, yeah. It's an interesting game. It's interesting in maybe ways that are different than you would imagine. But at the end of the day, it's also really good. So I do like it and think it is great. Check it. Thank you for listening to No Clip this week.
What are we talking about next time?
Next time, we're going to be talking about Pentiment, a game that looks like paintings.
Yeah, I actually, this has been requested in real life by our friends, and I have been avoiding information about it because I want to like go in fresh. But I think it's kind of like a narrative focused like role playing game.
Yeah, with a mystery involved in some way, I believe.
It seems cool. I've heard good things about it. I remember, like, I think when it came out, like, a couple people made YouTubes and videos about it. So, like, I remember, like, it made a little bit of a rumbling. So, I've heard good things, so I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. I'm hoping that it is very cool. Because I gotta say, it doesn't look all that exciting to me.
Mm-hmm. I'm predicting
nobody listens to this part.
Yeah,
so.
I'm predicting it's gonna be one of those games you think you aren't gonna like, but in reality, you're gonna like it a lot. It has that energy to me.
That's what I'm hoping for. So we're gonna check it out next time. Vinny.
Yeah.
But until that time, you can get a hold of us. All of our contact information is on our website at noclippodcast.com, where you can find links to our Twitter account, our email address, the YouTube channel, and you can listen to all of our old episodes, including ones that we've done on Elden Ring and Lunacid and Hollow Knight.
Dark Souls, Bloodborne, etc.
Dark Souls 2. Haven't done that one yet. Maybe, since we don't think that Lies of P is very difficult, if we get 5 likes on this video, we can do a Dark Souls difficulty tier list where we rank all the Souls-like games on how hard they are. So, hit that like button to do that.
Shoot the puppet string at the subscribe button. And give a robot baby to a woman in the comment section instead of her actual child, who is a corpse.
Google gobble.
Google gobble. Charged R2.
No.
Charged R2.
What am I thinking?
A break?
Yeah, I am thinking a break.